Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen.
Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth. I will only
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast in the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 66, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It is early Wednesday morning, January the 10th, and I'm in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama. Also, I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. And I know you hear that noise in the background, getting in the way of these dulcet tones. That's my neighbor, who for some reason is out here far too early, before the sun done come up, doing something in the yard with some kind of machinery. And I want to be like, get off your lawn. Okay. Technically it's his lawn, but I want him to get off his lawn. I have a show to record. Look, one of my very favorite Christmas presents I got this year was a very nice and stylish and sleek designed reading lamp. I recently bought a record player. Okay. I subscribed to an actual newspaper that you hold in your hands. All of a sudden I have a strong desire to make my coffee in a pot. No more of the pods. I want coffee like my grandpa drank. I want that strong. And when looking in the mirror lately, there's more gray hairs on my head and in my beard than you could shake a stick at. And I don't know who's out here shaking sticks when there is a lot of something. But whoever those people are, they could shake a stick at the gray hairs on the side of my head and in my beard. What I'm trying to say is, my people, I'm getting old. It happens to us all. We try to fight it, but eventually grandfather time shuffles up behind you in the silence and trips you into reality. I went to the doctor. I had to get some blood work done, and they told me that my cholesterol was high. I've never even heard the word cholesterol spoken out loud except for on a Honey Nut Cheerios commercial, okay? And you're telling me that my cholesterol is high, like I don't eat the right foods? Like I'm not healthy? I'm getting old. So I've decided to try and take better care of myself. I've been drinking at least 60 ounces of water a day, which seems to be making my body feel better. Hey, news bulletin, your body needs water, so drink that. It's making a difference. It's making me feel better. And, you know, I probably need to credit my wife, because every time something's wrong with me, she says, you're probably dehydrated. Maybe it's an ingrown hair. That's her answer. Doesn't matter if it's a headache. Doesn't matter what's going on. Hey, you're probably dehydrated. Maybe it's an ingrown hair. And you know, early returns, but she might have been right all along. Trying to start exercise again and trying to force myself into becoming a morning person. I'm just not. I don't want to people until I have had 3 cups of black coffee, at least. I don't want to speak to anybody in the first few minutes that I am awake, even my genetic little doppelgangers, okay? The ones that look like we used to. But I'm trying. I'm making efforts. I'm efforting, as they say on the news. Because I am a full-fledged night owl. And a borderline insomniac. Sometimes. And I don't make New Year's resolutions, but something I try to do every year is become more disciplined as a human being. As a man, as a father, as a husband. And I know that my day will just go better if I'm the first one up in the house. If I have that time in the morning. So I'm switching it up. I'm trying to take better care of myself. I'm trying to ward off the harmful parts of the old man aesthetic that are beginning to take me over, while embracing the good parts, like the newspaper, and the reading lamp, and the record player. I'm getting old. I've just got to accept it. I've got to deal with it. And I'm trying. I'm trying, my babies, and that's all you can ask for is effort. But anyway, as my neighbor so rudely uses a leaf blower before anybody else is awake, let's move on. Enough of that. Let's move on to some comments and corrections from our last episode. Our humble little show is being listened to across the globe, 68 countries in total and counting. We are, of course, being listened to all over this great country of ours, all 50 states, but we also continue to be incredibly popular in India, which makes up just over 40% of our listening audience. Though, I gotta be honest, India, lately you're slipping a little bit. Get them listens up. Get them downloads up. Subscribe. Pass it along to your neighbor, your friend, your brother-in-law like Ramesh did once upon a time. Shout out to my boy Ramesh. After India, it's followed by Canada. We're on fire in the UK lately, which looks like it's about to pass our neighbors up north for number 3 on our list. Then comes France, Australia, Mexico, Germany, Ireland, and Malaysia, who round out our top 10. I also want to give a special shout out to our 3 new listeners in Mozambique this week. Hola, Mozambique. We're currently averaging more listeners per episode than ever before. Still true thanks to you. We're still adding followers over on X, closing in on 10,000 there. You can find us over there at In the Shed 4. Please support the show by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you leave us a review this week, we'll give you a shout out on our next episode. By sharing the show with a friend, word of mouth is how we grow. And by joining our membership club at patreon.com/intheshed4, you can donate as little as $1 or subscribe for exclusive content for as little as $4 a month. If you keep supporting the show, I'll keep bringing you the news. On our last show, I mispronounced an alleged Epstein victim's last name as Geoffrey. The correct pronunciation is Giuffre. Who knew? Her name is Giuffre. That's a real thing. Last week during our coverage of reform of solitary confinement, I talked about the story of Khalif Browder. In fact, Khalif was 16 at the time of his arrest and was sent to Rikers Island, where he spent 1,000 days in prison, 700 of which were in solitary confinement before charges were later dropped. And in our coverage of college basketball, I said that at least 2 of the teams I give you typically make the Final Four. Well, it'd be more accurate to say that most teams we highlight make at least the Sweet 16, and we have successfully given 2 of the eventual Final Four teams on at least one occasion. Still impressive. And finally, in our coverage of the Beast of Busco, I mistakenly and repeatedly kept calling Oscar a giant tortoise. And of course, that man was not a tortoise. He was a turtle. They're not the same thing. And he was a turtle. We got a great show for you today, but first let's get to some listener emails. Our first email comes from Bruce from Kentucky, who writes, Wes, just curious, why didn't you cover President Biden's motorcade being intentionally hit by a motorist? I would think an assassination attempt on a sitting president would be newsworthy. Bruce, thank you for writing into the show. Well, that happened when we were off air. And when I came back and I looked at my news board, that was not one of the top stories I wanted to discuss and share, mostly because I haven't seen any follow-up about it. I do not know that it was an attempted assassination, as you say. Perhaps it was, but I haven't seen that reported firmly. and corroborated. President Biden was not in the car at the time. He was approaching the car and, of course, was whisked away by Secret Service and kept safe. I'm glad no harm came to the man. He is the leader of our country at this time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for writing into the show, Bruce. I am a journalist. Our next email comes from Tia from Glendale, Arizona, who says, Wes, love the paranormal segment. It's my favorite part of the show. But last episode's story about the giant turtle in Indiana was weak. Just because a couple simpletons see a large snapping turtle in exaggerated size does not a cryptid make. Well, Tia from Glendale, Arizona, thank you for writing into the show. I happen to like the story of Oscar, who was not a tortoise, but in fact was a very large turtle. And we did a poll on Twitter. What do you think happened in that story? Was it just that he was exaggerated? Was it a hoax? Was he exactly as described? And narrowly, most people think that his size was exaggerated. But I don't know. I wasn't there in Indiana, in Churubusco, Indiana. And I would love to go to the Turtle Festival, okay? I would dress as a ninja turtle, because that's my favorite kind of turtle. But the Beast of Busco, I think, is a fun story. And look, a cryptid is just an undiscovered animal. And if this snapping turtle was that much larger than an average snapping turtle, then hey, I think he fits the bill. And I love it. I love that 2 of our first 3 emails that we're reading today are a little bit on the negative side. That's okay. I will read your emails. If you disagree with me, if you don't like the show, if you write in, I might put you on air, and I'll respond to you. Thank you, Tia. And finally, Wesley from Wisconsin writes, hey, I like this guy already. Wes, you're typically pretty even-handed. That's why I was surprised to hear you argue that Trump deserves to be on the ballot. His actions have clearly disqualified him. And I take back what I said about you, Wesley. Because we may share a name. But that is not what I said. That is not the argument that I made on our last episode. I did not say that Donald Trump deserves to be on any ballot or deserves to be president, okay? I have said from the jump, I'm not a Trump supporter. I did not vote for the man. I did not vote for Joseph Robinette Biden either, okay? What I did was my best to cut through all of the BS and to give you what I think is actually happening here. And that's that both sides are playing party politics. That their interpretation of Donald Trump and his actions on January the 6th and how that does or does not apply to him moving forward and who they want to be elected are little more than means to an end. They both want to win. They both want to harm the other side. And the case that I made is while I certainly understand the belief that his actions disqualify him from being elected and serving as the next president, that's certainly anyone's prerogative, then I think the proper thing to do in this case is to beat him on the ballot. Beat him in the voters' booth. Put forth a better candidate with better policies and better arguments who will represent the people of our nation in a more proper fashion if you don't like the man. I think it's a dangerous precedent to start taking people off the ballot. The American people should decide elections. And though I certainly have questions about Donald Trump's behavior on and leading up to and after that date, I simply pointed out that comparing his actions to those of Confederates who took up arms and literally fought a war against our nation is about like comparing oranges and orangutans. It's not the same thing. And that's what that was written for and put in the Constitution for, was for the orangutan, not the orange man. And even if you don't like the orange man and you don't want to vote for him or you think that his actions have disqualified him from being the president, hey, you're entitled to that opinion. I know a lot of people that feel that way, but I still think the American people should decide. And that's all I said. That's all I pointed out. It wasn't a pro-Trump tirade. I wasn't arguing for the man. I wasn't arguing against him. I was just trying to cut through all of the noise, like I'm trying to do now, talking over this leaf blower early in the morning. That's all the listener emails this week. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics, and let's hit the headlines. Eric Adams is following in the footsteps of past one-term New York City mayors, writes the New York Post. Boeing CEO acknowledges mistake after flight's terrifying mid-air blowout, reports Fox Business. GOP shouldn't miss its chance to make red state gains, says Real Clear Politics. From NPR, 2023 was the hottest year on record. Is this how it's going to be now? And finally, Trump to personally give fraud trial closing argument. And that is according to the Daily Beast. Our first story in the world of politics, the Lloyd Austin incident sheds harsh light on Biden's team. In the midst of an international crisis involving the U.S. military, the top civilian leader of the Pentagon was hospitalized for days without the commander-in-chief knowing his whereabouts. The absence of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is a surprising development that puts a harsh light on President Joe Biden's national security team. And the odd thing is that there may be very little Biden can do about it, practically speaking. For the past week, Austin has been at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center outside of Washington, D.C., where he was admitted on Monday, January 1st, after he experienced severe pain following an elective surgery on December 22nd. For at least part of his time in the hospital, Austin was in the intensive care unit. The White House wasn't informed until Thursday of Austin's condition, nor were senior Pentagon officials like Austin's number 2 at the Pentagon, Kathleen Hicks. Typically, the U.S. Secretary of Defense is a savvy politician like former Senator William Cohen, who served under former President Bill Clinton, or former Representative Leon Panetta, who served under former President Barack Obama, or a longtime Washington player like Robert Gates, who was appointed by former President George W. Bush, but also served under Obama. Despite his decades of military experience, Austin is neither a politician nor a longtime D.C. insider, and instead is known to be an introvert who only gives public speeches and interviews relatively infrequently. Austin's introversion and seeming lack of Washington savvy may help explain why he and his team didn't give senior U.S. national security officials a heads up about his condition. The Pentagon has also offered up the rationale that Austin's Chief of Staff, Kelly Magsamen, was out with the flu when the Secretary of Defense was first hospitalized, but the Pentagon is the world's largest employer with 2.86 million employees, so the notion that relaying Austin's condition hinged on one person is confounding. Everyone is entitled to keep their own medical information to themselves or to select people, but that doesn't preclude telling others that you are out of commission for a few days, especially when you're the U.S. Secretary of Defense. That role, among other things, puts you in a room for decisions involving nuclear weapons, although the president has the sole authority to order the launch of those weapons. Biden tapped Austin to be Secretary of Defense in part because of their previous experience together. When Biden was vice president and was running the Iraq portfolio for the Obama administration, Austin was the top general who presided over the U.S. withdrawal of troops from Iraq in 2011. Austin also served as Central Command commander, where he helped lead the fight against ISIS in Iraq from 2014 during the Obama administration. Yet Austin doesn't seem to be a part of Biden's true national security inner circle, which includes U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, both of whom have worked with Biden very closely for many years. This may help explain why no one at the White House noticed that Austin was gone, or why perhaps they simply may have assumed he was on vacation. Austin was hospitalized on January 1st, a federal holiday, but that is not much of a defense since the Situation Room at the White House operates 24/7, and a simple call or email to the Situation Room staff from anyone on Austin's team should have been enough to inform the rest of the cabinet and their key deputies what was going on with Austin. There's rarely been a more fraught time during the Biden administration for the U.S. Secretary of Defense to be out of commission than now. Consider that on Thursday, a U.S. drone strike killed the leader of an Iranian-based militia in Baghdad, the Iraqi capital. The Baghdad strike was authorized before Austin was admitted to the hospital. Iranian-backed militias have launched more than 100 attacks against U.S. troops in Syria and Iraq since Hamas attacked Israel 3 months ago. The strike in Baghdad was a calculated risk by the Biden administration, especially since there are growing calls in Iraq, including from the Iraqi Prime Minister on Friday, to expel the 2,500 U.S. troops that remain in the country on a mission to counter ISIS. On Wednesday, the U.S. and a dozen other allied nations warned the Houthis, an Iranian-backed militia that controls much of Yemen, that they must stop their attacks on commercial shipping in the strategic shipping lanes of the Red Sea or face unspecified consequences which presumably would involve U.S. military action against Houthi targets. Meanwhile, Hezbollah and Israel seem to be inching ever closer to an all-out war. The Middle East is on fire, and one of America's chief firefighters was AWOL. Over the weekend, Austin released a statement saying he could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. Yeah, this man is the Secretary of Defense, and he just George Costanza'd it. Was that wrong? Should I have not done that? Yeah, you could have done a better job informing them. Like, hey, maybe just informing them. That would have been better. I agree. And I digress. That hardly seems the point, since Austin and his team did a terrible job keeping the president and other senior national security officials informed of his condition, which went unmentioned in Austin's apology. So what, if anything, can Biden do? Probably not much. A public reprimand of Austin by Biden would also serve to reinforce the view held by Republican critics that Biden's team isn't especially competent. If Biden fired Austin, he would only bring more attention to the issue, and in this political environment, finding another candidate for the position and getting them confirmed by the U.S. Senate would be a very heavy lift. So, it's likely that the best President Biden can do is to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So, I find this story to be just wild. This is absolutely incredible and absurd and disappointing and confounding and unfathomable. To think that you could be the Secretary of Defense in a time where there is war between Russia and the Ukraine, when Israel is at war with Hamas in Gaza, when the Houthis have attacked us 100 times or more and are attacking ships in the Red Sea, cargo ships in the Red Sea, to think that you could just not show up to work for an extended period of time and not even tell your boss, who happens to be the President of the United States. Okay. It's wild. And then to take things even further, the President of the United States did not seem to notice that the Secretary of Defense was not at work. What is going on? This is not a good look at the very beginning and outset of an election year for the Biden administration and team, to have one of your most crucial employees during a time when so much of the world is teetering. China is talking about invading Taiwan. War is popping up all over the place. The UN is being challenged. We're sending aid all over the world. Our military is having to conduct strikes. And the Secretary of Defense is AWOL? And the president didn't even know about it. Didn't even know that the man was diagnosed with cancer. And look, I understand that that is a private health matter. Okay. And I don't expect that he shared that with the American people. And I hope that he gets well. I hope that his treatment goes well. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. But you have to tell your boss. Is there any other job in the world besides a government employee, a high-ranking government employee, where you can just not show up to work, not communicate to your boss and keep your job? Hey, doesn't exist. Doesn't happen. If I was going to miss an extended period of time because of a health issue, I would have to have a conversation at least with my boss and explain what was going on. And it's precedent for high-ranking government officials to share some kind of information with the American people and with the media when they are receiving some type of medical treatment. But I'd be okay even if that didn't happen right away. But to just abandon your post and not show up to work and not even tell anybody, I just don't understand what's going on. It's confusing. It seems like a dereliction of duty on both the part of Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, also his communication staff, also his number two, and even the president and his people underneath him, to not realize what the situation was, to not communicate to each other, to not work together is not a good look. And it could have cost us majorly. It could have been incredibly detrimental. Like, this is the worst time for you to not show up and not talk to anybody about why you're not showing up. And I'm not going to go as far as some of the right-wing news that says that he should be fired or impeached immediately, or that he's unqualified, that he's done a poor job, or that he yada, 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 yada. And I also am not going to go the way of the left that kind of brushes this off as though it's no big deal, that he should learn from this and communicate better. Hey, this is a big deal. This is newsworthy. And I think it is indicative of the disconnect between those who are in powerful positions in our country and the average citizen. Because we don't have the ability to just miss work, even if it's a serious health issue, without making sure that there's somebody else to do the job, without communicating with our bosses, without going through the proper procedure and steps. And the Pentagon has come out and said that they are changing policy so this doesn't happen again. You don't need to change policy. You just need to do what you're supposed to do. In this case, that was not done. I don't know that it harmed us, but it certainly could have. And it's not going to do President Biden any favors moving forward. It doesn't make his administration look competent. It doesn't make him look like he's on top of things as commander-in-chief. And it was a self-inflicted wound. Knowing that people are showing up to work, communicating together is day one stuff. It's bare minimum. It isn't difficult. It's not difficult to make sure that everybody is at least clocking in and showing up. It's not difficult for Lloyd Austin to have communicated to his bosses. It's an easy thing. And it's a mistake that isn't tolerated for the rest of us at our jobs, but hey, the Pentagon is different. They don't have to pass audits. We've covered that on the show before. Look it up. They've never done it. They can lose millions and millions and millions of dollars without any repercussions. And apparently they don't even have to show up for work. And nobody notices the difference. I would be offended if I was Lloyd Austin, to be honest with you. If I didn't show up to work and nobody even noticed that I was gone, that doesn't speak very well of me. And if my boss didn't notice, it wouldn't speak very well of him. It's absurd. It's absurd. Our next story in the world of politics, here's what we learned and didn't learn from the Jeffrey Epstein unsealed documents. Over the past several days, hundreds of documents from a Jeffrey Epstein-connected lawsuit were unsealed and released for the first time. The last of these documents was unsealed on Tuesday. The full scope of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged criminal activity has remained shrouded in mystery after the disgraced financier and convicted sex offender died in jail before he could face trial on federal trafficking charges. CNN has reviewed the newly unsealed documents, which were released piecemeal beginning last Wednesday and totaled over 4,500 pages. The files included the names and information of many dozens of people that were previously redacted, including some of Epstein's accusers, prominent business people, politicians, and more. An individual's inclusion in the documents does not indicate that person was accused of any wrongdoing, and much of the information found in the documents has been reported on in various media outlets in the years since they were originally sealed. However, the newly unsealed documents were also notable for the information they did not reveal. There wasn't a full list of unredacted names. During his life, Epstein, a well-connected financier, allegedly, ran in elite circles, rubbing elbows with world leaders and prominent business people, even after he pled guilty in 2008 to soliciting a minor and registered as a sex offender. The question of who from Epstein's well-heeled inner circle knew about or participated in his alleged illegal activities, there's that word again, alleged, have been the source of anger and interest among victims' advocates, law enforcement officials, and members of the public in the years after the scope of Epstein's crimes have become more well known. The documents are part of a 2015 civil defamation suit brought by Virginia Roberts Giuffre, that's her last name, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, we got it right this time, against Epstein's former girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell, alleging Epstein sexually abused her while she was a minor with the help of Maxwell. Giuffre and Maxwell settled the suit in 2017, and most of the court filings were unsealed in 2019, one day before Epstein died by suicide, allegedly, in jail. Maxwell was found guilty of trafficking in 2021 and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, hundreds of documents remained unavailable to the public until the judge overseeing the case ordered many of them to be unsealed and unredacted in a December 18 order, like we reported on our last episode. And while many documents were unsealed in full, others still contained pages of redactions, meaning there are still plenty of unknowns regarding the case. Many of the people revealed in the documents already had known links to Epstein, including former Presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, Britain's Prince Andrew, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, French modeling scout Jean-Luc Brunel, and Leslie Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret, all of whom have denied wrongdoing in connection to Epstein. Trump and Clinton are not directly accused of wrongdoing in the documents, and in an unsealed 2016 deposition, Giuffre denied knowledge of them participating in any abuse or crimes. On Trump, Giuffre said she never saw or witnessed Donald Trump participate in those acts, but was he in the house of Jeffrey Epstein? I've heard he has been, but I haven't seen him myself, so I don't know, she said. When asked earlier this week about Trump's name appearing in the newly unsealed documents, a Trump spokesperson reacted by attacking the media. Trump in the past has sought to distance himself from Epstein. Clinton's name was mentioned many times in the unsealed court documents and depositions of several people who worked for Epstein, including accusations that Clinton, quote, likes them young, and that the former president allegedly pressured Vanity Fair not to write about the disgraced financier. Former Vanity Fair editor Graydon Carter, who oversaw the magazine at the time, told CNN last week the alleged pressure from Clinton categorically did not happen. Giuffre recounted meeting Clinton more than once, including at a dinner on Epstein's Island in 2002, but said she was not involved with him intimately. I didn't have anything to do with Bill Clinton. He was never intimately involved with me. I've never witnessed him intimately involved with anyone, she said. However, Giuffre said that she believed Clinton was a witness to the abuse of minors because he knew what my purpose there was for Jeffrey, and he visited Jeffrey's island. In a 2016 Jeffrey Epstein deposition transcript made public Tuesday, Epstein did not answer any substantive questions, invoking his Fifth Amendment right hundreds of times in the more than 5 hours he sat for questioning. Epstein did not answer dozens of questions about his relationship with Bill Clinton and whether the former president had been on the financier's private island. When Bill Clinton came to your island, he was accompanied by 2 young women who were approximately 18 years old. Is that true? Attorney Paul Castle asked Epstein. Fifth, Epstein answered. A spokesperson for Clinton confirmed in 2019 that the former president had flown on Epstein's private plane, but said that Clinton knew nothing of the financier's terrible crimes and had never visited the Little St. James Island or Epstein's residences in New Mexico or Florida. A Clinton spokesperson Tuesday reiterated that 2019 denial and told CNN that he was never on Epstein's island. The spokesperson also noted that several people testified that Clinton did not visit the island. Last week, the spokesman noted it has now been 20 years since President Clinton last had contact with Jeffrey Epstein. The documents also included some unsettling allegations. In an unsealed excerpt from a deposition of Epstein's associate, Nadia Marcinkova, an attorney asked Marcinkova if she was with Jeffrey Epstein on his birthday when one of his friends sent him 3 12-year-olds for the purpose of Jeffrey Epstein to abuse. He then asked if these 12-year-olds were from France. Were they sent to him on his birthday by Jean-Luc Brunel or by somebody else? Brunel, a French modeling scout, died in a jail cell in 2022 while under investigation by French authorities for his ties to Epstein. Marcinkova invoked the Fifth Amendment and did not answer the question. Giuffre also recounted the story of 12-year-olds being sent to Epstein in her own court depositions. The documents also include police reports from local Palm Beach law enforcement that investigated Epstein for years. The allegations have been widely reported, but the newly unsealed documents detail a detective's interviews with dozens of girls that illustrate a pattern of Epstein's methods of procuring vulnerable girls for abuse. In an unsealed deposition, Palm Beach detective Joseph Recarey laid out a process he said Epstein and Maxwell used to find and recruit girls to perform massages and work at Epstein's home. Recarey testified that these massages would usually lead to abuse. Another accuser whose name remains redacted in the unsealed documents said that she was between the ages of 15 and 17 when she was paid to give Epstein massages, which she thought would involve no intimate contact. I just was there, and all of a sudden something horrible happened to me, she said of her experience with Epstein, adding, "It wasn't supposed to be that way, but it was." Alessi, Epstein's former employee, testified that one victim under the age of 18 would occasionally bring her mother along to Epstein's home. In terms of payment, everybody got $100 an hour, Alessi said. So, just wanted to follow up on the Jeffrey Epstein document. Because on our last episode, they were supposed to have been released by midnight of the night in which we were recording a show, and they weren't released until the following day. And ever since then, they've been trickling out hundreds of pages at a time, if you want to call that a trickle. And they've revealed a lot, and they've revealed very little. Okay. Because on the one hand, there are all kinds of salacious details, accusations, and names of former presidents, world leaders, politicians, scientists, celebrities, and everything in between in these documents. However, it's important to note that this is not a client list. That list, I doubt very seriously, will ever see the light of day. And like I said on the last episode, you have to believe that the FBI and that law enforcement has that list. They retrieved cameras and USB drives, computer hard drives, notebooks, and a host of other things from that man's house. You got to believe that they have that list. Why it has not been released, why it is not public, why there have not been anyone else arrested or charged with crimes other than Ghislaine Maxwell, I cannot answer. But this was not a client list. This was testimony from a couple of those who are saying that they are among the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, who gave this testimony during a deposition in a civil lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell. So the media that has gone through great lengths in reporting on this story to say that just because somebody's name pops up does not mean that they were a client of Jeffrey Epstein. When they say that, they are correct. Okay. Because if a celebrity's name gets mentioned one time in this deposition, and maybe they rode on Jeffrey Epstein's plane once, maybe they were introduced to him by somebody else in the world of finance, and they had a dinner where he was there and they were there, and their name gets brought up one time, but they have no other ties to the man, they don't have a relationship with him, and there's no reason for us to believe that they've been involved in anything nefarious, then they should not be maligned or canceled or called a pedophile because their name popped up in a deposition. But by the same token, we've got to use a little bit of common sense here. If somebody's name has come up in these documents 60, 70, 80, 100 or more times, don't you think that maybe that person should be investigated? That maybe their ties to Jeffrey Epstein may not be above board? That if somebody was hanging out with him after his first conviction, if they were riding on his plane, if they were spending time on his island, that maybe they knew what was going on? And without labeling them or accusing them or casting aspersions, we should at least look into it. Authorities should at least do a thorough investigation. And if any of those people named participated in any of this in any way, no matter who they are, how much money they have, what title they hold, what positions they've served in, the full force of the law should come down on them swiftly. And they should be in prison for years. And I'm sorry, but the whole, well, of course I knew the man, but I had nothing to do with any of his illegal activities, doesn't hold water with me. If you were hanging out with him after 2008, if you were on his plane 55 times, if you get name dropped in every one of these documents, there just might be some fire because there's a whole lot of smoke. And you deserve to be looked at carefully and put under the microscope. Folks like Prince Andrew and Leslie Wexner, Bill Gates, former President Bill Clinton, Alan Dershowitz, all of these names come up over and over and over again. And I hope that they're being thoroughly investigated for their ties to Jeffrey Epstein, because this man had an entire trafficking network. And the victim here is not the celebrity whose name popped up one time and they're getting some bad press. The victim here is not Bill Clinton or any of those folks I just named. The victims were these girls whose lives were overturned and ruined, whose innocence was stolen. And Ghislaine Maxwell is not the only person alive responsible for their harm or who contributed to it. And names should be named. And people should be arrested. And should spend time in prison for it. I have no evidence that Bill Clinton participated in any of this. I don't know if he did or not. I know that on the right that they are pretty doggone sure. On the left, they're trying very hard to draw even lines between him and Trump because they were both named. Cut through the noise. Let's play this straight. Let's use some objectivity. The man is named something like 74 times in these documents. And Jeffrey Epstein, in the foyer of his $2 million apartment that was gifted to him in New York. Who gets gifted a $2 million apartment, by the way? But in the foyer of his townhouse was a painting of Bill Clinton wearing a dress. He's been on the plane. He's allegedly been to the island, although he disputes that. He's named 74 times in these documents. It's worth investigating. It's worth finding out for sure. It's worth getting to the bottom of it. And I don't care if it's Donald Trump, if it's Bill Clinton. If there is smoke around any of these people who are named, they should be vetted. It should be investigated. And I guess the fear for the public is that the answer is already known by authorities. And nothing is being done. That's the real fear here. That's why people were so hungry for these documents to be released, because we know in our heart of hearts that the FBI, law enforcement, government at some level knows names of those who were involved. And that somehow, for some reason, those folks are escaping justice. Those folks are not being made to pay for the crimes that they have committed against the most vulnerable people in our society, children. And it's disgusting. So, these documents are being discussed everywhere. It's all over the news. It's all over every podcast. And most people are approaching it with a political agenda. Let's just keep it real. I don't have any agenda other than for the truth to prevail, for the guilty to be punished, for those who did wrong to do time. But I think you have to start with all of these people who are named so many times in the documents, who had ties to Epstein for years, who spent time with him at dinner, on his plane, on his island, in his homes, who ran in his circle. You have to start there. Unfortunately, these documents are not a client list, and we may never see one. But these documents should at least push forward the desire from the public, and hopefully from law enforcement, for a thorough and real and lasting investigation. So in a way, these documents told us a lot, but in another way, they actually told us very little. Very little that we didn't already know, that Jeffrey Epstein was a dirtbag and the epitome of evil incarnate, and that he networked with a lot of high-profile, powerful, rich, monetarily rich people, but morally bankrupt people who contributed to and participated in the evil that he was doing. And every one of them deserved prison. And that's that. Our next story in the world of politics: Alabama still can't find heart missing from prisoner's body. And yeah, this is a real story. Alabama, where I happen to reside, still can't find heart missing from prisoner's body. The first witness didn't know where the heart was, nor did the second, nor the third. No answers as to the location of Brandon Clay Dotson's heart came during a Friday morning hearing at the Hugo Black U.S. Courthouse in downtown Birmingham. And if you were English, you would pronounce it Birmingham. Birmingham. Dotson was found dead at Ventress Correctional Facility on November 16th. The 43-year-old's family members, his mother, daughter, and brother, claim in a federal lawsuit that they spent days trying to obtain his body. They did receive his body on November 21st. The family suspected foul play, in part because of the Alabama Department of Corrections' extensive and ongoing violations of basic human and constitutional rights, said the lawsuit. They hired a private pathologist to do a second autopsy on the body. The doctor, Dr. Boris Datnow, discovered during his exam that Dotson's body was missing his heart. The family filed a lawsuit after that revelation, suing the Alabama Department of Corrections, the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences, and UAB Medical Center, arguing the heart was in some way received or planned to be received by the university. Dotson's family is asking for the heart to be returned to them and to find out why it was removed in the first place and under whose orders. The heart of a deceased person simply does not go missing in the absence of deliberate illegal activity or gross negligence on behalf of the entity or entities that had possession of the body prior to it being turned over to the family for burial, said the family lawsuit. And I feel like that's a pretty common sense statement to make by the attorney here for the family. The heart of a deceased person simply does not go missing in the absence of deliberate illegal activity or gross negligence on behalf of the entity or entities that had possession of the body prior to it being turned over to the family for burial. He basically just said the heart did not grow legs and walk away. You remember when your parents would say that to you when you were looking for something? Well, it didn't grow legs and walk away. That's what he's doing here. I digress. On Friday, U.S. District Judge Madeline Hughes Hakala held a hearing in the case trying to pinpoint where the heart currently is and why it went missing. No answers came during the 3-hour hearing. Lawyers for the prison system said that Dotson's heart was inside his body when it left their facility, and they do not have the heart. The family's attorney, Lauren Ferriano, said the department is shrouded in secrecy and that Dotson's mother had to use money from her retirement account to pay for the second autopsy. People forget we're talking about a human being here, he said. The fourth and fifth witnesses were no help either in locating the missing organ. In all, 5 people testified during the 3-hour hearing. They were the warden at Ventress, where Dotson died, the commissioner and chief deputy commissioner of the Alabama Department of Corrections, the director of the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences, and the head of autopsies at UAB. All people who die in custody have an autopsy, said multiple prison officials. Some of those autopsies are done at UAB, while the rest are conducted at the state level by the Department of Forensic Sciences. But Dotson's autopsy was performed by the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences, testimony revealed. Attorneys for UAB argued that no one from the school performed the initial autopsy on Dotson, nor had his body or organs ever been in their custody. But the director of the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences, Angelo Della Mana, said he hadn't reviewed Dotson's particular case file and couldn't answer any questions about Dotson specifically. And hey, that's unacceptable. You know the case. You know what's going on. You know what the lawsuit is about. And you just show up and say, I haven't looked at it. Hey, do your homework, Angelo. Take your job seriously. Don't say I don't know. I digress. He said that in a standard autopsy, a person will have their internal organs examined and then sectioned or have pieces of tissue cut off to be sent for further testing to determine cause and manner of death. The organs will then be put in a special biohazard bag and returned to their appropriate body cavity. The organs are not replaced in the exact place where they anatomically are located. Those tissue sections are generally the only pieces of organs that would not be returned to the body, Della Mana said. He couldn't name a reason why a fully intact organ wouldn't be replaced in the body. I think we can probably get some insight on that by looking at the document that's currently available, said the judge. If any sections were sent for further testing or if there were anything abnormal about the body, Della Mana said the information would be in Dotson's case file and autopsy report. That report has not been provided to the Dotson family attorney and is not yet public. Hakala ordered the state to provide the report for her to review privately by the end of the day Monday. Lauren Ferriano, the Dotson family's attorney, said she believed the medical school was planning to receive the heart until the lawsuit was filed. But a UAB attorney said in court that Ferriano had absolutely no evidence to that and added that the university is certainly very sympathetic to the Dotson family. UAB checked with the Alabama Department of Corrections and they had not sent Dotson's body or organs to any UAB entity, according to court records filed in response to the lawsuit. Lawyers for the school asked the judge on Friday to dismiss them from the lawsuit entirely. There's really no reason for us to be here, they said. It just simply does not involve us. So, The state of Alabama has lost this man's heart. And the family had to file a lawsuit to even get them to participate and even engage with them as far as the questions they have as to why. Why did it take so long for us to be able to access his body? And when we got it, what happened to his heart? And this story is even more shocking than the story about the Secretary of Defense going AWOL. And it's certainly more sinister and more appalling. It should be pretty cut and dry when it comes to the issue of where is this man's internal organ. They should be able to look at records and say, well, during his autopsy it was removed for this reason, it was passed on to these people, it's held in custody here. Where is the chain of custody? This is a human being's heart we're talking about. And a couple of things that are curious to me about this story. One is that this man was incarcerated at the time of his death, okay? And it is an unfortunate truth that sometimes when people who are incarcerated pass away, they do not have any family that comes and claims or picks up the body. And it's also an uncomfortable truth that UAB Medical School happens to get some of the cadavers that they work on from Alabama prisons. I believe that is the case. There may be regulations and stipulations involved, but I believe that is the case, that they get some of their cadavers from Alabama corrections facilities. And it should not be a difficult process when someone passes away while incarcerated for the family to retrieve the body. The fact that that took days leads me to believe by deductive reasoning and by simple logic that there was probably something that was not as it should be. That maybe they had already messed up Aaron and then they needed some time to figure out what to do. So then they delivered the body back to the family, hoping the family does not notice that it is missing a heart. And the family has an independent autopsy done, and they do discover that their loved one has been returned to them without his heart, which, hey, it's a problem. It's a problem. Who wants their loved one's body to be desecrated without explanation, without permission? Then after not getting their questions answered, the family has no choice but to sue in order to try and get to the bottom of what exactly happened, and still nobody is telling. Everybody is literally saying, I don't know. Wasn't me. Wasn't me. Saw you in the shower. Wasn't me. Caught you red-handed. Wasn't me. Saw you on the sofa. Wasn't me. The state of Alabama and UAB are giving this family the Shaggy treatment. And it's not entertaining in the slightest. It's gross. It's deplorable, and it's wrong. No family who is in the middle of loss and grief deserves to be treated the way that they have been. And for the state official to say, this is what normally happens, but in this situation, I don't know what happened. I haven't read the specifics. It's a joke. It's a joke. I don't know what happened. I have no insight, no evidence, no sources. But what appears to have happened, one possibility that is jarring, is that the prison, in thinking that this man would never be picked up and he was not loved or cared about, donated his heart to science, or was in the process of attempting to donate his heart to science, and then got caught and didn't know what to do. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, I don't know if they destroyed evidence. I don't know if there's a cover-up, a mist. But I do know that this is tragic. And this is wrong on so many levels. And it's happening in 2024 in America, right here in my backyard. Right here in Alabama. And if you listen to this show for a while, you know that we cover local news, we cover national and international news. You know that we like to hold the powerful to account. It's the job of a journalist, and hey, according to the internet, guess what? I am one. All because I have a 50-foot extension cord stretched out here to my shed. And thankfully my neighbor finally quit blowing his grass. So early in the dang morning. This story makes me sick. I feel sorry for the family. I hate that they're going through this. Even somebody who's made mistakes and who's had activity that landed them behind bars deserves to be treated better in death than this. And I hope that the judge gets to the bottom of it. I hope offenders lose their jobs. I don't call for people to lose their jobs. This is something where you need to lose your job. If there in fact has been a cover-up. If they in fact acted before the family had an opportunity to give consent. They've desecrated a corpse. And it's disgusting. I'm not making any allegations. I'm simply telling you what it looks like. And if I'm wrong, then that is a good thing. And that's a positive thing. If the conclusions that I'm drawing are way off base, then hey, wonderful. But I don't know what else could have happened to this man's heart. And I'm just telling you what this situation looks like, and if it is in fact what it looks like, what needs to happen. Do you see something I'm missing here when it comes to this story? Are there explanations that are less of a travesty, less invasive, less deplorable? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Find us on X at intheshed4 and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Our final story in the world of politics this week. Trailer park urges residents not to talk about 13-foot cat-eating python. Yeah. We're not going to Florida for this story, surprisingly. Instead, Oklahoma. Trailer park urges residents not to talk about 13-foot cat-eating python. Nobody covers wildlife in the world of news like we do here. From my shed, in my backyard, in Alabama. Management of a South Oklahoma City mobile home park urged its residents this week not to speak about a 13-foot-long cat-eating albino python still in the neighborhood. Residents of Burntwood Mobile Home Park and hey, the first problem is you're living in a place called the Burntwood Mobile Home Park. Nothing wrong with mobile home parks, but I don't know that I would live in one called Burntwood. I don't think so. I digress. Claimed the park's management knew about the python since June and did nothing. The only reason they finally did something was because a resident snapped a picture of it, said a resident wanting to remain anonymous in fear of eviction from management, which I think is illegal, but I digress. He'd been living in the park for 10 years. 10 years. This snake been living in the park for... This snake is a decade strong. He's one of the residents. He has squatters' rights. Them sending out a warning to us not to talk to the media. It's intimidation all the way. Over the last couple of months, residents say they've been concerned by the number of cats who've gone missing from the neighborhood. Then a picture of the yellow albino python slithering near one of the homes gained traction online. The snake was originally thought to be 5 feet long and a ball python, but when an expert was hired, he told Nexstar's KFOR that it was a reticulated python and was around 13 feet long and eating the cats. And I would be so mad if my cat went missing in the Burntwood trailer park. I would be so mad. Trevor Bounds of Redbeard Wildlife Control was hired to take care of the snake and said they're waiting until repairs to the siding are done by the park before they can get in there. Bounds told KFOR on Sunday that the snake has been eating cats in the park for the last 5 months to survive. Several residents say that management knew about the snake and never warned them or tried to get rid of it until recently. You can tell he's been there a while when you see all around the house he's at. There are signs of him being there through rain and in the heat, said Bounds. Since the story first broke, management has been sending alerts to its residents not to talk to the media about the python or the problems it brings. And hey, holler at your boy, Burntwood Mobile Home Park. They say don't talk to the media. You have a free opportunity to talk to the media on my show anytime you want. If you or your family hear this, get at me on Twitter at InTheShed4 and tag me in a post. Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I will give you an hour and we will talk nothing but this 13-foot long cat-eating python in your mobile home park. The trailer that the snake is at is just a couple blocks away from the pool, and they closed the pool all summer, but we had no clue why, said the anonymous resident. They knew that the snake was out, and having residents in the pool might not be the safest choice. Early last week, an alert from management stated, "We've had a few media outlets attempt to interview our residents regarding this issue. Must be a slow news week." Or maybe it's called gross negligence, I think. Management of the Burntwood Mobile Home Park. If you were contacted by the media, you are encouraged to ask them to leave the community immediately and give them no comments. I would give so many comments. All I would do if I lived there is give the media comments and probably deliver a big fat lawsuit. KFOR was asked to leave 3 times last Friday when trying to get a response from management in regards to the massive python. On Wednesday, KFOR tried several more times to get a response or answers, but was eventually kicked off the property. The park is owned by Yes Communities, and I'm going to say it's a no for me, dog. It's a no. You should be renamed to No Communities because you have created no communities. This is not a community. This is a hostage situation. And that snake be eating people's cats. An email and a phone call were made to their media relations department, but KFOR has yet to hear back. Off the property, a man in a Yes Community shirt spoke with KFOR, saying that staff only knew about the snake when the picture was posted and gained traction. He also said the length of the snake was more likely 5 feet long and that it was contained to a single trailer home. As of Wednesday, the snake was still on the property somewhere. And I'm going to guess that the snake is closer to 13 feet long. Because it's out here eating people's pets. And you close the pool. And you're telling residents not to talk about it. Hey. Those are not good signs. Yes, communities, you are not trustworthy. You've now been officially named No Communities. And this might wind up being a class action lawsuit for anyone that has lived in that trailer park. Because they're being held hostage by a reptilian. And not the kind that live in underground layers and come from outer space. I'm talking the old school kind. With the forked tongue. And it's out here eating people's felines. And it ain't right. They actually tried to come back with, well, it's more like 5 feet, and it's only under one trailer. I'll see you in court. That would be my response. I'll see you in court. That's all for the world of politics. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. The Miami Heat extend coach Eric Spoelstra, signing him to a record $120 million deal. Giants defensive coordinator Wink Martindale cursed out head coach Brian Dable over firings. Draymond Green aims to cut antics, saying, "I've cost my team enough." Titans fire coach Mike Vrabel. Seahawks fire coach Pete Carroll. Broncos leave door open for Russell Wilson's 24 return. Saints players back Winston amid touchdown criticism. Joel Embiid to miss second straight game with sore knee. And finally, the Michigan Wolverines sealed their perfect story with college football playoff title. Our first story in the world of sports. Sports Illustrated publisher fires CEO after AI debacle. Digital publisher The Arena Group, which operates household brands such as Sports Illustrated and The Street, fired its chief executive on Monday amid a larger C-suite bloodbath, a spokesperson for the company told CNN. A spokesperson for The Arena Group declined to go into further detail to explain the ouster of Ross Levinson, who served as chief executive for 3 years. But the move came after an embarrassing debacle in which Sports Illustrated was caught publishing stories with fake author names and profile photos generated by artificial intelligence. Levinson was replaced effective immediately by interim chief executive Manoj Bhargava, the 5-Hour Energy founder who owns a majority stake in the Arena Group, said Vince Bodiford, a spokesperson of Bhargava. Levinson's termination comes less than a week after the Arena Group fired 3 of its major executives: Operations President and Chief Operating Officer Andrew Kraft, Media President Rob Barrett, and Corporate Counsel Julie Finster. All of the media brands, including Sports Illustrated, will continue to operate with the management of those verticals, while the company just takes a broad view of operations and how to improve the business overall, Botifer told CNN. Asked whether the changes have anything to do with allegations that Sports Illustrated used AI to write articles, Botifer said, "We have nothing further to add to the company's prior statements regarding AI." Which in layman's terms means yes. That's like responding, yes, that is why. That's exactly why. And that is exactly why. Mr. Levinson was a well-respected and experienced executive in this world. But apparently, to save some money and make ends meet in a landscape when it comes to media that is changing drastically, this man made the poor decision to use AI-generated articles and AI-generated authors that did not exist. Robots wrote this man's stories, and I could have included this easily in the paranormal news, and I did not because I chose a different story. I put it in sports because it relates to sports, but hey, it's all about the robots, not the base, but the robots. And this is an issue when it comes to AI. And this is where the chickens come home to roost when it comes to journalism and music and writing. That it's going to be so much easier, rather than employ actual people, to have AI just generate content. For all you know, I am AI. And I am nothing but generated content, okay? That's why I'm so popular in India. No, I'm the real deal, my babies. My tools, my people. I'm the real deal. I'm out here in my shed when it's 35 degrees like last time I recorded, or when it's very early in the morning and my neighbor is blowing leaves in the front yard like today. I'm out here in the shed giving it to you straight, giving you the news like nobody else from a backyard shed. And we're the best at it. We're the best doing it. But Mr. Levinson wanted to save some bucks and he got caught, and it was embarrassing. And the 5-hour energy guy took over. And hey, maybe he was looking for an in and this was his opportunity, but man, Sports Illustrated is about to be lit. Because I just imagine that guy's got some energy. You know what I mean? Like, that guy has more energy than you can shake a stick at. And that's my old person saying for the day. And I don't know what it means or where it came from, but hey, he's got energy, okay? He's got those artificial aorta busters just coursing through his veins. And now he's in charge. And we'll see how it goes, but I thought this was an interesting story. Do you think this is a fireable offense? Should this man have been given another chance? Was it a bad decision? Was he wrong? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Find us on X at intheshed4. And let us know what you think. Moving on to some football, the college football championship happened this week. The Michigan Wolverines defeated the Washington Huskies 34-13 to win the college football playoff national title. Of course, my prediction was Washington 30, Michigan 28, and it did not come to fruition. I got both playoff games correct in my predictions. This one I did not. And I told you on my show last week that I thought Michigan was the better team and probably would win, but I was going to go the other way. And maybe I led with my heart instead of my head, as I tend to do when it comes to sports. Because I don't necessarily have anything against Michigan, but I just wanted to see Washington win. They played so many close games this season. I love what their coach Kalen DeBoer has done there. I'm a fan of Michael Penix Jr. I just wanted them to win. But really, Michigan was pretty dominant. Michael Penix Jr. was held to 27 of 51 for 255 yards passing with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. J.J. McCarthy only threw for 140 yards for Michigan, but both Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards rushed for 100-plus yards, combining for 238 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns just between the two of them. This game, like many in football, especially at the college level, was won up front. Michigan was dominant on both lines of scrimmage. They kept Michael Penix Jr. uncomfortable, hurried, and even hurt. He just never seemed like himself. He wasn't dropping the ball into the windows that he normally does. He missed open receivers, and a lot of the credit has to go to the defense of Michigan. Because while Washington's offense may not have executed at the rate that they normally did this season, Michigan was certainly covering well in the secondary and getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. My question now is, what comes next for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan? They went 15-0 this year, which is an incredible accomplishment on its own. They won a national title. Jim Harbaugh said he came to Michigan to win a national title and return them to relevance on the national scale, and he's done that. Goal accomplished. Now what will he do? Will he ride off into the sunset back to the NFL? He's a hot commodity there. There's definitely going to be interest, and I expect him to at least interview for jobs. Will he try to avoid the new landscape of college football with NIL and the transfer portal, where you have to recruit not just high school athletes, but also the kids on your own team? Is he concerned or worried at all about the NCAA continuing to come after him for the scandal of former assistant Connor Stalions stealing signs from opposing teams, even dressing up like you belong on the sidelines for an opponent, allegedly, on one or more occasions? I don't know. I think the fact that they went 15-0, though, was very impressive. It may be even more impressive that they did so in a season in which their coach was suspended multiple times and had to sit out 6 games. There's no doubt that bunch of kids is a resilient one, and the credit should go to them and to that coaching staff every bit as much as to Jim Harbaugh, though he has turned that program around and made it relevant in a way that it was not when he arrived. I think that maybe Jim Harbaugh returns to Michigan. He might flirt with the NFL, but I just don't see him jumping at this point. Who's got it better? Nobody. I think he truly believes that. And I think he realizes that though there may be some sanctions handed down, that we're at a point when it comes to college football where to a certain degree the NCAA no longer has teeth. Not in the way that it used to. The emperor has no clothes, and Jim Harbaugh knows that. I think he returns to Michigan. The NFL playoffs begin this weekend, which means that it is time for our NFL playoff
extravaganza.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to look at the NFL playoff bracket. We're going to make our selections. This is our 2024 In the Shed with Wes NFL playoff
extravaganza. Extravaganza. Extravaganza.
And that's really the best I could do when it comes to sound bites. We working on a shoestring budget, okay? Go join our Patreon at patreon.com/intheshed4. I would greatly appreciate it. In the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens have the number 1 seed overall and the bye. The 2-seed Buffalo Bills host the 7-seed Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think that Buffalo wins. They have rounded back into form. Josh Allen has been good Josh Allen more than bad Josh Allen as of late. I think that the Buffalo Bills are the more talented team. They have more of an upside. Pittsburgh, I think, will struggle on offense in this game. I have the Bills winning 24-10. Then the 4-seed Houston Texans host the 5-seed Cleveland Browns. And look, the Texans have had a phenomenal season. Nobody thought that they would be a playoff team with a rookie head coach in DeMeco Ryans and a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud, which despite the way that he played and performed in the college football playoffs against Georgia, the best and most dominant college defense in years, people still had questions about his ability to translate as an NFL quarterback, including myself. And I was wrong. I was so very, very, very wrong. C.J. Stroud has had a phenomenal year. I ranked him as the 6th best quarterback in the league this season. And not only do they have a playoff game, but the Texans have a home playoff game against 5-seed Cleveland. with 47-year-old Joe Flacco at quarterback. Joe Flacco, who came off the couch and has performed very well. I think that Cleveland has a better defense. They're the more experienced team. This game could honestly go either way, but I'm going to say that the Texans hold on and win a close one at home, 17-13 over the Browns. The 3-seed Kansas City Chiefs host the 6-seed Miami Dolphins, and this is another game that could go either way. The Dolphins have had a record-breaking offense this year, but they've kind of tapered off here lately. Part of that is due to injuries. Part of it is NFL defenses adjusting to their scheme, and this is the Tyreek Hill Bowl. Tyreek Hill returns to Arrowhead. These two teams get to match up this time in our country instead of Germany. And I know that Patrick Mahomes has not really been himself this year. I know that the Chiefs lack reliable options at the wide receiver position. But the Dolphins are without two of their best pass rushers that they've lost to injuries. The Chiefs still have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and are playing at home in one of the most raucous environments in the NFL. I have the Chiefs beating the Dolphins 24-17. This would mean that in the divisional round, the Ravens would host the Houston Texans, and I don't think that game would be close. I think the Ravens are too explosive, are too good, have a dominating defense. I think that they win that one going away 31-13 over the upstart Texans. And then the Bills would host the Chiefs. This time the Bills have the home field advantage. Patrick Mahomes has to play in the cold. And I think that matchup, which would normally be a high-scoring barn burner of an affair, this year would not turn out to be so. I think it would be lower scoring. Neither offense is quite where they were last season or the year before. And I think this time the Bills win 16-13 over the Chiefs, which would set up this as the AFC Championship game, the Ravens hosting the Bills. And I'll take the Ravens in a close one. I'll take the Ravens. I'll trust John Harbaugh. I'll trust Lamar Jackson. I'll trust that defense. I have the Ravens beating the Bills in the AFC Championship game 26-24 and advancing to the Super Bowl. In the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers have the 1 seed in the bye. The 2 seed is the Dallas Cowboys, who host the 7 seed Green Bay Packers. And look, this is a game in which I do not count Green Bay out. Everyone knows that the Cowboys have a tendency to disappoint their fans in the playoffs. Jordan Love, despite how he looked last week, has really come on the second half of the season. But look, Dallas is one of the best teams in the league when they play at home. And because the NFL gifted them a win over the Lions, and because the Eagles are free-falling and laid an egg against the hapless Cardinals, the Cowboys have home field advantage. And I think that they win this one going away 28-10 over the Packers. The 3-seed Detroit Lions host the 6-seed Los Angeles Rams. And this is a matchup of quarterbacks. They got traded for each other. Matthew Stafford returns to Detroit. Detroit gets to host a playoff game for the first time in years. And I think the Rams spoil it with the win. Dan Campbell has done a tremendous job. If not for DeMeco Ryans, he would be my choice for NFL Coach of the Year. Jared Goff has been very good this season. But the Rams are coming on strong lately. They're getting healthy and catching fire at the right time. Matthew Stafford is playing well. I think that he's still a better quarterback than Jared Goff when healthy. Give me the Rams 21-17. The 4-seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers host the 6-seed Philadelphia Eagles. And this is a game in which I'm very tempted to pick the Eagles because they have so much more talent on that team. Because they should be a whole lot better than they have been the last 5 or 6 weeks. Because they started off 9-1 on the year. Even though they should win this game, I just don't have the ability to pick a team who is backed into the playoffs in a way that I've never seen before. I'm riding with Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. I'm going Buccaneers 16, Eagles 13, which sets up this as the divisional round games. The 49ers host the Rams. And I'm going to do something shocking. I'm going to take an upset, and I'm going to go with the Rams, kicking a late field goal and defeating the 49ers on the road 24-21. I think both of these teams have a very talented roster. I think both teams have good quarterbacks. Both teams have exceptional head coaches. But I trust Sean McVay a little bit more. I think that he can do some things schematically that very few coaches in the NFL can do. I think that Matthew Stafford will have a big game. And though Brock Purdy has more weapons, I think Matthew Stafford has more playoff and big game experience. I'm going with the Rams. Then the Cowboys host the Buccaneers, and I just don't see a way where the Buccaneers keep it close. The Cowboys win at home 31-14, which sets up this as the NFC Championship game, the Dallas Cowboys hosting the Los Angeles Rams. And again, I'm going with the Rams. I think the Rams are on a heater. I think they go on a tear here in the playoffs. I think they're one of the teams nobody's talking about that actually has a chance to make it to the Super Bowl. I have the Rams defeating the Cowboys 24-13 to advance to face the Ravens in the Super Bowl. This year's Super Bowl, I think, is the Ravens versus the Rams. And as I've said, even before the season began, the Ravens lift the Super Bowl trophy. John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson, and company get it done. They defeat the Rams 27-13. And that is our In the Shed with Wes Anderson 2024 NFL Playoff
Extravaganza.
Yeah, it's a
Extravaganza. Extravaganza. Extravaganza.
Or maybe I should be grammatically correct and say it's an
Extravaganza.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Who do you have winning this year's Super Bowl? What two teams advance to make the Super Bowl? Who comes out of the AFC? Who comes out of the NFC? Where did I go right? Where did I go wrong? Let me know what you think. I've been on Baltimore all season. If you disagree, I want to hear from you. Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Find us on X at intheshed4. Before we leave the world of sports, we get to do something that we rarely ever do on this show. Cue Wolf Blitzer, because we have some breaking news. And our breaking news comes from the world of college football. Usually this is a read and react offense on this show. We take the news that has happened and we cut it up and talk about it. We give it to you straight, no chaser. But today we're breaking news on this show in the world of college football. This is just coming across the ticker and across our news desk. Alabama head football coach Nick Saban is retiring after 17 years as the coach of the Crimson Tide. And this might be the biggest news story in the world of sports today, because Nick Saban is very arguably the greatest college football coach of all time, and probably one of the best coaches of all time in any sport. Not at the NFL level, he didn't do so great. But when it comes to the world of college football, there are very few coaches throughout history that you can even mention in the same sentence with Nick Saban. And this is coming from an Auburn fan, okay? I'm not saying I like the guy. I'm talking about greatness. And as you know, game recognized game. I'm the greatest at what I do, delivering news from a backyard shed. Now I have a little less competition, sure, but he's great at what he does, coaching college football. And the dynasty that he built and the way that he dominated at Alabama is something that we've never seen and we may never see again. Kirby Smart might have something to say about that, but he's the only one, along with maybe Urban Meyer, in the modern landscape of college football that's done anything close, even for a stretch of time, with my apologies to Dabo Swinney. And if you listened to last week's episode of the show, I asked this question. In talking about the playoff game in which Michigan defeated Alabama, I asked the question, does Nick Saban now retire? I said, hey, he's 72 years old. He's won at the highest level for a long time. It's been 3 seasons since he reached the college football national championship game. His teams the last few seasons are just not dominant and elite at the positions that we're used to them being elite, like the offensive and defensive lines and wide receiver. Is this the moment that he picks to go out and put his feet up and rest at the lake? Yesterday I saw the Alabama defensive coordinator Kevin Steele was retiring, and I wondered if something was amiss, only to find out today that, yeah, it is. The Nick Saban era at Alabama is officially over. And Alabama fans are thankful and grateful and devastated. And the rest of the country is relieved, is what they are. Already there's been some fallout from this announcement. As the number one player in the state of Alabama and 5-star receiver Ryan Williams, who was committed to Alabama but is being wooed by Texas A&M, Texas, and Auburn, has decommitted from the Crimson Tide. The question now is, who in the world will replace Nick Saban? Nobody can, but somebody has to follow him. Somebody has to take that job. Who will it be? Let's examine that together for a moment. Let's start with Alabama's wish list. These are the 5 coaches that I believe will be on their wish list, and what order I believe they will be on their wish list. The first is Kirby Smart, then Steve Sarkisian, then Dan Lanning from Oregon, then Lane Kiffin, and lastly Dabo Swinney. I don't think Kirby Smart will be interested. I think Kirby Smart is going to flirt with the Atlanta Falcons but stay at home at Georgia. That's his alma mater. He's lost 1 game in like 2.5 seasons by 3 points to Nick Saban in Alabama. He's got the blueprint of what Alabama has done to build a dynasty, and he's working it to perfection at Georgia. I don't think that he takes the Alabama job. Then comes Steve Sarkisian. And this is an interesting one because he's had some level of success at Texas. He finally has that thing up and going. He's a good offensive mind. He's a great recruiter. Obviously, he was Alabama's offensive coordinator under Saban. But I'm not necessarily certain that this is the time that he would jump ship from Texas and go to Alabama. And the reason why I say that is because Texas is set to join the SEC next year. The playoffs are expanding to 12 teams. He made the playoffs this year, came within a hair of advancing to the championship game, has a lot of talent returning. I think he probably stays put at Texas. Then there's Dan Lanning from Oregon. That's an interesting name. Dan Lanning is a very good recruiter. He's not lacking when it comes to the area of confidence. He's a type of coach that wouldn't be intimidated by following Nick Saban. I think that if they offer him the job, he may take it. But I'm not sure that they will or that he will. Then there's Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is one of those coaches that is a firebrand. You either like Lane a lot or you can't stand the guy. I fall into the like him a lot category. He was one of 2 guys that I wanted Auburn to hire before they hired Hugh Freeze last offseason. He's a great offensive mind. He's a decent recruiter. He's good in the transfer portal. He knows how to use social media and how to work the game. He was offensive coordinator at Alabama under Nick Saban and rehabilitated his career and his reputation. He's proven to be a good football coach at Florida Atlantic and at Ole Miss. If you win double-digit games at Ole Miss in the SEC West playing Auburn and Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M every single year, you know how to coach football. And Lane Kiffin knows how to coach football. But there's other things to consider here too, and one is that his tenure at Alabama did not necessarily end on the best of terms. He was taking a head coaching job and was trying to balance setting up his new staff while also preparing for the college football playoffs. And Nick Saban sent him packing and said, just go do your new job. We don't need you. I do believe that Nick Saban has the ability to appoint his own successor. I do not think that Nick Saban would retire unless that conversation had already been had. And he said to the brass at Alabama, I want input. I want a check mark beside the name before it gets announced to the public. And I don't know that Nick Saban would give Lane Kiffin his sign of approval. I'm not sure that he would co-sign that hire. And in fact, I have a suspicion that maybe he would block it. If Lane Kiffin was offered that job, he would take it in a heartbeat. As much as he loves Ole Miss, he would pack his family up and he would leave. I wondered last offseason if maybe the reason why he didn't take the Auburn job after flirting with the Tigers and appearing to be very interested in them was because he knew that this was coming and he was waiting on the Alabama job. And that maybe he turned down Auburn because there were side conversations happening that, hey, in the next couple years, I'll be retiring. and this thing will be yours. If he gets hired, then we know that that is, in fact, exactly what happened. But in my gut, part of me says that Nick Saban would not choose Lane Kiffin and may even block him as a candidate. And then there's Dabo. Dabo, who played wide receiver as a walk-on at Alabama, who's from the state, who's won national championships, but who none of the Crimson Tide fans want anywhere near their program. Believe me, I'm surrounded by Alabama fans. This is the truth. They would riot if Dabo Swinney were to be hired. And again, if Nick Saban has any input, and if my theory that he gets to sign off on the hire is correct, I don't know that he wants Dabo either. Because those two have butted heads. Those two have not had the warmest remarks about each other in the public or private sphere after going up against each other year after year on the big stage. And besides, Dabo's program has really regressed and slipped the last couple of years in many of the ways that Alabama's program has just started to under Nick Saban. When it comes to NIL, when it comes to the portal, when it comes to not having the elite athletes at key positions. They've been there already for a couple of seasons. I would be surprised if the pick was Dabo Swinney. I think that's Alabama's list. I think their top choice is Kirby Smart, followed by Steve Sarkisian, followed by Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin, and Dabo Swinney. But hey, what if none of those guys are available? What if they all say no? Where does Alabama turn? What happens after that? Where do they go from here? I want to give you 3 names that are not going to be talked about very much in the media, that are on the periphery, that are not at all likely candidates, but that Alabama may turn to in the case that all 5 of those guys on their list say no or are vetoed by Saban. The first is Florida State coach Norvell. Norvell, who has become known for the fact that his team went undefeated, did not make the playoffs, and got boat raced in the bowl game by Georgia. How do you get the Alabama job after losing 66-3? That's a good question. That's why he's a peripheral candidate, and a very unlikely one. But if Alabama doesn't land one of those 5 guys, then the next grouping of coaches to have to be considered, he may be high on that list because he has done very well at Florida State cleaning up a mess and bringing that program back to relevance on a national scale. He's a good recruiter. He's a good football coach. He knows how to build a program. And at Alabama, you're given the keys to a car that already has some pretty nice tires. You don't have to build that thing from scratch. It's already built. You just have to maintain it. Change the oil. Put some window washer fluid in there, okay? I think that he's fed up with the fact that his school plays in a conference like the ACC where they get left out. It's not appearing that there are too many options for them to move to a new conference right away. He would take that job in a heartbeat, but he's a very unlikely candidate. He's on the periphery. The next coach is Penn State's coach James Franklin. He's got SEC experience coaching at Vanderbilt and actually doing fairly well at Vanderbilt, which is hard to do. He's done a very good job at Penn State. He's a solid football coach. I wouldn't say he's excellent. I don't think he's elite. He's a solid football coach. And you would expect for Alabama, as one of the 2 or 3 premier programs in the country, to hire elite, not solid. But if they whiff on their top 5 candidates, they might start looking at coaches that are a little bit less likely. And I think James Franklin would be in that category. He would be a coach that might get a look if all those other guys were not available. And the third coach is former Tennessee Titans coach Mike Vrabel. You want an outside-of-the-box candidate? Here's your guy. NFL coaching experience, known as a good leader, as a program builder, as a player's coach, but also a disciplinarian. And he's a hot commodity in the NFL. I don't know if he has any interest in coaching in college football, but if Alabama picked up the phone and made a call, hey, he's coming down to Tuscaloosa for an interview. I don't think he's a likely candidate. As I say, these 3 coaches, Norvell, James Franklin, and Mike Vrabel, are all only options if all of Alabama's top choices say no or are not available. but I think it's at least an intriguing possibility. Then let's look at some even less likely candidates. Some guys that would make you really raise your eyebrows if they got a look, but that in extenuating circumstances might be an option. Worst case scenario hires for Alabama. The first would be Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was surprisingly let go by the Seattle Seahawks. Pete Carroll was a phenomenal college coach at USC. Granted, a lot has changed since he last coached college football, but he was a phenomenal football coach at USC. He was their coach the last time that they were actually a national title contender. He knows how to get kids into the NFL. He's coached at the highest level, but he's not exactly a spring chicken. And that's what makes him so incredibly unlikely. If Alabama has a coach at 72 who retires, what is the likelihood that they follow with a coach who's in that same generation? It's not very likely. But it's fun to think about. Then there's Elijah Drinkwitz, the coach at Missouri. Missouri was sneaky good this year. A season where if he had a 500 year, he would really be on the hot seat, and instead they were sneaky good. He's done a very good job at Mizzou. He has defenses that outplay their talent. He's a good quarterback developer, an innovative thinker when it comes to offense, and he's a pretty good recruiter also. I think he's a coach that if he got hired, Alabama fans would not like the hire at all, and he may not be elite, but he would do a solid job there. Now, granted, we're talking about coaches who are less than likely. We're talking worst case scenarios, but in that scenario, if all of your main options and these elite coaches are not available to you at Alabama, which is hard to imagine, maybe they look at a guy who's young, who's proven that he can be successful in the SEC like Elijah Drinkwitz. Another very, very unlikely worst case scenario hire is SEC coach Mark Stoops from Kentucky. Mark Stoops, who by all reports was going to be the head coach at Texas A&M until the fans revolted. If that were the case, how would Alabama fans react to news that Mark Stoops was coming to Tuscaloosa? It wouldn't be pretty. And the thing about Mark Stoops is he's recruited better and coached better and won more than any coach in Kentucky history. That is a basketball school. They were terrible year in and year out when it comes to football and didn't even really have a lot of fan support. And he has grown and reshaped and built that program to the point where if they win 7 or 8 games, sometimes it's even a disappointment. What he's done there is remarkable. He's the winningest coach in their history. I don't think that he even gets a sniff from Alabama, but in a worst case scenario, a proven SEC winner is someone to be considered. And then the last worst case scenario coach is Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien has experience in the NFL, experience in college football. He was the coach of the Texans. He coached Penn State. He was Alabama's offensive coordinator. And in a worst case scenario, he might be seen as at least someone familiar with the program, with Saban's blueprint, who could provide a steady hand for a couple of seasons while they made a plan forward, while they figured things out long term. Alabama fans would be despondent. They would be inconsolable if they hired Bill O'Brien. But that's the list, and that's what we're looking at. I think that the coaches they'll go after and want will be Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin, and Dabo Swinney. I think the unlikely coaches to be considered that are on the periphery, if all of those coaches are unavailable, would be Norvell, James Franklin, and Mike Vrabel. I think even less likely than them would be Pete Carroll, Elijah Drinkwitz, Mark Stoops, and Bill O'Brien. And now let me tell you who I think should get the job. And that's DeMeco Ryans. Yeah, that's DeMeco Ryans, who's one of the better players to come out of that program on the defensive side of things. DeMeco Ryans, who has put his time in as an assistant in the NFL. DeMeco Ryans, who should be the NFL Coach of the Year, who as a rookie head coach took a team that was terrible last year, that does not have as much talent as the other teams, who has already proven himself as a very good defensive coordinator, has proven that he can relate to players, and now has taken Houston to host a playoff game. He's young, he's enthusiastic, he's a leader, he's a heck of a football coach. Alabama should get on the phone and tell DeMeco Ryans that as soon as you lose a playoff game, the job is yours. I think that he would recruit phenomenally well. I think Nick Saban would sign off on the hire. I think that it would be a very good fit and that he could be very successful at Alabama. And look, I actually really like DeMeco Ryans. I'm an Auburn fan. I really like DeMeco Ryans. I think that he's the guy for Alabama. I think that that's who they should hire. Is he interested in coaching college football? That I don't know. But don't you think if his alma mater came calling, he would listen? He would sit in for an interview. And if you get in a room with Nick Saban, who I expect would be in that room, does he really say no? And that's what they're going to do. They're going to make all of these coaches on their list say no. They're going to get them in a room, which they'll be able to do for any of those guys. They'll at least get them in a room. And they're going to make them say no. What's going to happen at Alabama? Who are they going to hire? Who's going to follow Nick Saban? Who's going to have to try to fill those shoes and keep that dynasty running and keep it going? It will be interesting to watch and to find out. We'll keep an ear to the ground. Maybe by the time we record next week's show, we will have an answer to those questions. But I would put money on them hiring one of the guys that I mentioned. One of the guys on that list. Time will tell. From the world of sports, let's switch to this, the news in the world of the paranormal, where our first story takes us to the state of Washington. Man accidentally photographs Bigfoot after experiencing weird smells and sounds. A man thinks he accidentally took photographs of Bigfoot after he uploaded these photos to a Facebook group this week. After hearing strange noises and noticing a weird smell in Ho rainforest, and I think it's pronounced Ho. I'm not familiar with the rainforest in Washington State, but it's H-O-H. And I don't know how else to pronounce it. I think it's Ho. I digress. In 2015, JJ Enrique Timblin decided to investigate and take photos. He recently posted the 2 images to the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot Photos, Videos, and Sightings Facebook group. And shout out to that group, the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot Photos, Videos, and Sightings group on Facebook. A very, very specific group of people. One shows the supposed Bigfoot squatting next to a massive tree. The other image shows a strange black figure which looks like the stereotypical depiction of a Sasquatch lurking in the background. We were camping up there and taking pictures of big trees and ourselves next to big trees. You were just taking pictures of yourselves next to big trees. And if that's how Bigfoot is discovered, one of the most elusive creatures in history, discovered because somebody is taking pictures of themselves next to a big tree, I find that to be hilarious. And this was in one of the pics next to one of the trees, JJ explained. I did notice strange noises that day and a weird smell. We even left the area and went to another due to the weird vibe. A week later, while in my apartment in Seattle, I zoomed up on a picture of a big tree, wondering what that dark area was, and this is what that dark area looked like. Maybe a Bigfoot sighting on accident? Who knows? People on the Facebook group were convinced that JJ may have stumbled upon the actual Bigfoot. The Ho is real squatchy. You gotta love a news show like mine. Sentences get read like the Ho is real squatchy. And that should be a meme. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, go ahead, my tools, my people, and meme away. Because the Ho is real squatchy should be a meme. And as far as I know, this rainforest is in fact the Ho rainforest. Looks like he saw you, one person wrote. I like the picture. It could be something, said another person. And it could. It could in fact be something. Most pictures are, in fact, of something. Other people, meanwhile, were more skeptical. Looks like a black bear to me, but we've heard and definitely smelled it, and the smell is different than a bear, one person wrote. Another person was also convinced that the picture shows a bear. Looks like a small black bear when I zoomed in on it. Start with most likely creatures and work down to least likely. Obviously not deer, elk, etc. No need to jump to far out conclusions, the social media user said. So, this man was in the rainforest, taking pictures of himself next to large trees, as one does. Totally, definitely, absolutely a normal thing to do. And after hearing some weird sounds and smelling something funky. And hey, when you're in the woods, you don't really shower. Maybe it was yourself, but anyway, he smells something funky, gets a weird vibe. And later on in his apartment in Seattle. And didn't we all know he was from Seattle? We all knew he was from Seattle, but in his apartment in Seattle, while looking at the pictures, he thinks, I have discovered Bigfoot. And I have never seen this picture before. I have not looked at it. I'm about to do so live on air. It's kind of interesting. As usual, it is completely out of focus. Very blurry. But you can see the foliage. You can see the trees. You can see some limbs on the ground. And there is a dark figure appearing to be standing on two hind legs, or, as they say on the Bigfoot shows, most definitely bipedal. I love when they just hear something in the woods and they're like, it sounded bipedal. Hey, how can you tell by listening to a sound if something is moving on two legs or four? It's running through the forest. It's snapping trees. It's running through the brush. You don't know. But it sounds bipedal. Who knows? The hoe is real squatchy. I don't know. I could definitely see it being a bear. It looks kind of like a black bear to me. They do stand up on their hind legs for short periods of time. I'm not sure what this picture shows. It certainly doesn't prove anything. It is interesting. I'll give it that. I'll say it's definitely interesting. As is the man's story. If nothing else, it's entertaining, but I'm just waiting for a picture or video of Bigfoot that is not blurry. What comedian said that maybe Bigfoot is just blurry by nature? Was that Mitch Hedberg that said that Bigfoot just is blurry? Something like that? I don't know. This picture is a blurry picture. Some people would point to the Patterson-Gimlin film and say we already had a video of Bigfoot that was not blurry and no one believed it. I don't know. I'm a hopeful skeptic. I would like to see some definitive proof, but I think it would be neat if Bigfoot is real. I've heard a lot of anecdotal evidence. I would like to push my chips in at 51-49 in favor of the Sasquatch. But this picture doesn't necessarily do it for me. I find it interesting, but not evidential. Look it up and let me know what you think. Is this a Bigfoot? Is this a black bear? Is this a person in a suit or just some shrubbery in the shadows in an unfocused picture? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Find us on X at intheshed4. The hoe is squatchy. And it is. It's squatchy. From Washington State, we go to Los Angeles for our next story. UFO or balloon, unidentified object spotted over Air Force One may have simple explanation. A pair of amateur plane trackers captured strange footage earlier this month of an unidentified airborne craft that appeared to hover above Air Force One as President Joe Biden visited Los Angeles. Unsurprisingly, speculation that it was extraterrestrial in origin began almost immediately. A few viewers are saying we saw a UFO. Peter Solizorno, who runs the YouTube channel LA Flights with his brother Joshua Solizorno, said with a laugh during the December 10 livestream. The plane spotters had set up the day to film footage at Los Angeles International Airport as two F-35 patrolled the skies for the commander-in-chief. While they were elated to film the jets being refueled mid-air by a KC-10 tanker aircraft, they didn't expect to capture anything as unusual as the white sphere that came into view. What's more, the brothers didn't just capture the footage of it once, but 3 times. The object first appeared to zoom across the screen at 10:18 a.m. local time as it traveled in the opposite direction above Air Force One. Joshua recognized it right away. "You see that? We got something flying in the way," Joshua said. "I'm not too sure what it was." Minutes later, it appeared again, prompting Joshua to comment that it was moving around weird. By the time the object appeared on camera for the 3rd and final time at 11:08 a.m., Joshua was starting to become unnerved. "I'm kind of scared looking at this," he said. "I'm not sure what it is. Could it be a balloon? I'm thinking balloon." His brother, though, wasn't buying it. "Are you just saying that to keep certain authorities away?" Peter asked. The Solizarno brothers did not immediately respond Friday to USA Today's request for comment, but some skeptics are already dismissing the sighting as having a mundane explanation. Author Mick West, a well-known UFO debunker, reviewed the footage for DailyMail.com and concluded it was most likely a balloon. As for the apparent motion in the video, West said that it's likely an illusion caused by the balloon being closer to the camera than the fast-moving plane in the background. "It looks like a balloon. It moves like a balloon," West told the Daily Mail. The Pentagon's relatively new office to investigate UFOs, allegedly relatively new, which the government refers to as unidentified anomalous phenomenon, 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 has identified more than 500 military encounters with the craft since 2004. While some of those reports defy an easy explanation, the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, better known as ARROW, has said many have been determined to be natural occurrences such as unpiloted aircraft or weather balloons. NASA is similarly insistent that no conclusive evidence has yet been found to determine that any reports of UAPs are extraterrestrial in origin. However, the space agency recently hired a director of UAP research and released a report stating its intention to continue studying the phenomenon. I already did the song. That poses a potential threat to U.S. airspace. So, again, another interesting story. These 2 brothers that have a YouTube channel in which they document airplanes and track planes and record them being flown and refueled and who's coming and going in the skies, get an opportunity to film Air Force One, which is pretty cool. And they see a UFO. And they did. They did see a UFO because, as we have gone over ad nauseum on this show, a UFO is an unidentified flying object. So if something is flying through the air and you don't know what it is, by definition, that is a UFO. So as I have been talking, I have been watching this video. I have not seen this clip before. And I think that probably it is a balloon. That explanation does make sense to me that it's a balloon. It seems to kind of move like a balloon. It's very, very small. I could see that explanation panning out to be true. Definitely interesting piece of video and something that is worthwhile. I can't imagine that it is any type of aircraft being that close to Air Force One. If that was even a drone or any type of aircraft that close to Air Force One that we could capture on video as these brothers did, they would have also captured it being shot down or the attempt to have it shot down, I would think. Now, we certainly know that something has been going on in the skies that the government is not fessing up to or telling us the truth about. There is certainly a cover-up afoot. And that's no longer even conspiracy theory. That's something getting covered on the nightly news. But as far as this, the UFO seen over Air Force One, I got to keep it a buck with you. Looks like a balloon. Looks like maybe somebody had a birthday and let a balloon go. And it made its way over to Air Force One. I might be wrong. I have been once or twice before. Ask my wife. But that's what I see. And that's my take on the matter. From Los Angeles, we go to every house in the South for our next story. Are cockroaches disgusted by humans? Yeah, we covering cockroaches on the show tonight. We put that AI story in sports because we wanted to cover cockroaches on the show tonight. If I get an email, email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. If I get an email sent into the show saying, hey, you covered cockroaches in the paranormal segment, and that is not paranormal, I might spontaneously combust, okay? I've already told you, nobody covers wildlife like we do on this show. Nobody covers animals. Nobody covers insects in the world of news like we do here in my shed, in the backyard early in the morning, or sometimes late at night. We talking cockroaches. Are cockroaches disgusted by humans? One of the most unpleasant creatures to find crawling through your house is undoubtedly the cockroach. It is also one of the most common. The mere sight of a cockroach makes most people filled with disgust and gives them a desire to run away or hide. For me, cockroaches are a thing of nightmares and something I wish to stay far, far away from. Cockroaches have been around for millions of years, and so has the human distaste for the creatures. As far back as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, there's a recorded spell meant to keep cockroaches away. Be far from me, O vile cockroach, for I am the god Noom. In addition to that, around 77 or 79 AD, Pliny the Elder in his book Natural History recommended that the disgusting creatures be squashed at first sight. Pliny the Elder also had some comments on the remaining juices, suggesting they be used to treat ailments of the ear. And that's just nasty, Pliny. I wonder how Pliny the Younger felt about that, using the juices of squashed cockroaches to treat ailments of the ear. Pliny, you are nasty. There is anecdotal evidence that cockroaches feel the same disgust toward humans. Imagine you're staring down at a cockroach. It seems to be looking right into your being. You can feel the disgust contained within its eyes. Or can you? Could it be true that a mutual dislike exists? Upon sighting a human, is a cockroach really disgusted enough to run away and clean itself? Surely a pebble-brained cockroach couldn't comprehend the feeling of disgust as strongly as us humans can. When touched by a human, a cockroach exhibits actions that can be perceived as disgust, such as running away and cleaning itself. These actions do not indicate that cockroaches are disgusted and can be attributed to their acting on impulse of a simple nervous system. It's most likely that cockroaches are just trying to stay alive. Both the oils of a human and the shadow of a human represent immediate danger to the cockroach. The rest of the article will attempt to break down why cockroaches behave this way and then explore why humans are disgusted by cockroaches, because this is what we're doing on the show tonight, okay? We're talking about why cockroaches appear to be disgusted by humans and why the feeling is mutual. And I want you to just accept it. And I want you to bask in the glory of what is this show. That we go from the Secretary of Defense going AWOL, to Nick Saban retiring, to Bigfoot, and now cockroaches. Every time you touch something, oils are left behind from your skin. When or if you ever happen to touch a cockroach, oils will also be left behind. These oils may seem harmless but can cause a major irritation for insects. Cockroaches cannot properly function with an accumulation of any foreign material on their body. Particularly bothersome to the cockroach is a buildup of materials on their antenna. A study found that when the antenna of a cockroach is not cleaned, their smell is limited. Cockroaches use smell to seek out food and to find mates, both of which are important activities to the survival of cockroaches as a species, and to the survival of every species, to find food and find mates. Cockroaches have evolved methods to clean themselves. They do so by running their antenna and legs through their mouth. When cleaning, cockroaches are vulnerable and cannot move at full speed. Cockroaches have been observed cleaning themselves when they sense they're safe. Other insects, most notably houseflies and ants, will also clean themselves for similar reasons. The cleaning action is non-emotional for cockroaches, and that's good to know. I don't want a cockroach feeling stressed out because they're dirty, because people oil from their hands have gotten onto the roach antenna. You don't want an anxious cockroach. I'm glad that cleaning is a non-emotional activity for them. I digress. Cockroaches do not experience the human touch, then run off in horror and in feelings of disgust. Neither do they then plot to eradicate humans as some humans do them. Cockroaches are simply invoking an evolutionary response designed to keep them alive and well. To think that cockroaches can comprehend the actions they're performing is simply to give them too much credit. The other aspect of the illusion that a cockroach is disgusted by humans is their tendency to scurry away when discovered. Again, cockroaches are not advanced enough to know or process a feeling of danger the same way a human does. Cockroaches react to specific frequencies, changes in lighting and vibrations commonly triggered leading up to their discovery. All of these senses are primal and do mirror human senses. A cockroach sees something and reacts. It does not have the capacity to think about different options and the consequences of each. Combined, the scurrying of cockroaches and the fact that they clean themselves after being touched can make you think that they are disgusted by humans. However, they're only acting on hardwired biological functions. Cockroaches are hard to kill because of these survival mechanisms. It can be sad knowing the feelings of disgust between you and a cockroach are not mutual. So, I just read a very long article about whether or not cockroaches are, in fact, disgusted by us, like we are them. What has this show come to? Look, I just wanted to talk about the fact that I just learned this week that cockroaches clean themselves after touching humans. Okay. I think that's darn near supernatural. I think that's an interesting fact. That after making contact with humans, cockroaches have the audacity to run away and clean themselves. Like we're nasty. Like we deserve to be squashed. Like we're the ones with the problem, like T-Swizzle says. It's me. According to the cockroach, it is. And I do not believe this article, okay? First of all, it was very difficult to read. There were a lot of typos. I did not write it. But I do not believe them that cockroaches do not find us disgusting, because I think that it's more fun to live in a world where cockroaches are every bit as disgusted by us humans as we are by them. And if you live in the South, you know that cockroaches are just a reality. It doesn't mean your house isn't clean. They're going to find a way in. And they're going to get got, or they're going to run under the fridge. Only two scenarios. You catch it and squash it, or it goes under the fridge. And it lives with you forever. And if you live in the South, you know that that's real. And that's true. And that's life. I ate a cockroach one time. I didn't expect to have this much cockroach material, this much cockroach content on the show tonight. But I did. I ate a cockroach one time. I was a kid. It was not last week, okay? My buddy and I were fourth graders, and we were playing outside, and we lifted up one of those lids off the meter box out in the yard, and there was a ton of cockroaches. And my best friend had just had his birthday, and he pulled out a $50 bill from his wallet. And he said, if you eat one of those cockroaches, I'll give you this $50 bill. And hey, I didn't hesitate, okay? I picked one of them suckers up and popped it in my mouth and crunched down on it and swallowed fast. I'm talking fear factor level fast, okay? And I snatched that $50 bill out of his hands. And would you believe he went to crying? And he ran inside and got his daddy. And his daddy came out to referee and see what the problem was, and finally he told his daddy he took my birthday money. And the dad said, what happened? And I said, he said that if I ate a cockroach, he'd give me the $50. And the boy's dad looked at him and said, son, is that true? And his son, crying, nodded. And then the dad looked at me and said, "Well, you eat it?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he replied, "Congratulations," and walked back in the house. And that's my cockroach story, okay? And also cockroaches are disgusted by you. And they clean themselves after they come in contact with people. And if you don't find them and squash them, they live in your house forever because they go under your fridge. And that's real. From cockroaches, we go to urban legends for our final story tonight. Top 10 urban legends and myth that have survived the test of time. We've all heard them. Usually they happen to a friend of a friend's second cousin, and in almost every case they're completely untrue. Still, some urban legends have managed to gain a remarkable amount of credibility. From creepy folklore to rumors about celebrities and politicians, here are the top 10 urban legends that have managed to gain a popular following. Number 10, the automatic 4.0. This one has been making its way across college campuses since the 1970s, and it's been popping up as a plot in movies and TV shows for years. It says that any college student whose roommate commits suicide will automatically receive a 4.0 grade average for the semester as part of the college bereavement policy. Other versions tweak it a bit to include murder or an accident, but all stick to the basic principle of dead roommate equals good grades. Not a word of the story is true, of course, and it's said that the rumors most likely started out as a joke among stressed out college students. And that's definitely one that I've heard before, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of thought that one was true. I did. I kind of thought that one was true. I vaguely remember a 90s movie, some comedy about that very situation and scenario. But apparently it is not true. Number 9, Mr. Rogers was a Navy SEAL. Fred Rogers and his classic children's show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood were legendary in the TV world, so it was only a matter of time before a few scandalous rumors started floating around about him. Probably the most popular and downright ridiculous was a legend that claimed that Rogers was a Navy SEAL during the Vietnam War and that he had numerous confirmed kills as a sniper. This same rumor often asserted that the only reason Rogers wore sweaters was to cover up all the tattoos he'd gotten during his time in the service. Both tales are completely untrue, but this is one urban legend that refuses to die and is often applied to other clean-cut, wholesome celebrities, most notably John Denver. And I guess I'm 0 for 2, my babies, because I've heard this one repeated my entire life. And I thought that Mr. Rogers was in fact a sniper in the military. And apparently he was not. Apparently he was not. And I thought he was. Number 8, Bloody Mary. Although it's more folklore than urban legend, the Bloody Mary story is so old and well known that it had to make the list. A common game at children's slumber parties, the story states that the ghost of Mary Worth, a woman who was supposedly executed for being a witch, will manifest when summoned. This usually involves going into a darkened room and shouting her name 3 times, at which point her face will appear in a mirror. There are a number of variations on the story, with some claiming that the face of Satan appears or that the mirror turns red, and others stating that the name must be said 13 times, but all follow the same general theme. And you can call it folklore. You can call it an urban legend. You can call it the hokey pokey turn yourself around. That's not what I'm all about, okay? I'm a grown man. I already told you on this show today, on this episode, that I am now old. That I have crossed over. I got a lamp for Christmas and was excited about it, okay? But I still will not go in the mirror and do this. I think that it is playing with something that I want no part of. I ain't calling nobody into that mirror. And I remember kids used to do this in elementary school. Particularly the girls would go in the bathroom at recess and do this. And I've heard stories throughout my years growing up of people doing this and things going sideways. Call it folklore. I want no piece of it. Number 7, JFK and the Jelly Donut Speech. The story dates back to 1963, when then President John F. Kennedy traveled to Germany to give a speech. Wanting to express solidarity with the people of Berlin, Kennedy said to them, "Ich bin ein Berliner," which translates in English to, "I am a Berliner." But since a Berliner was also a certain kind of popular pastry in Germany at the time, many have surmised that the phrase translated to the crowd as, "I am a jelly donut." I don't know why that's so funny, but "I am a jelly donut" is pretty funny. And that should be a t-shirt. I am a jelly donut. You'd buy it. You know that you would buy it. And over the years, a number of stories have surfaced saying that Kennedy was nearly laughed off the stage after saying it. It's hard to say where the story originated, but it's been proven to be a myth, and reports have shown that not only did Kennedy have the phrase translated by a professional interpreter before using it, but the crowd understood him perfectly. And I believe that one. I have no trouble believing that because John F. Kennedy was a phenomenal orator and wise enough to use a translator. Okay. But, and I'm just saying here, I'm just spitballing, if he actually had said at that time to a crowd of people in Berlin, Germany, "I am a jelly donut," top 10 all time when it comes to speeches from U.S. presidents. Number 6, folklore. Over the years, there have been so many urban legends about the popular soft drink Coca-Cola that they've been given their own name, folklore. Probably the most famous urban legend in this regard is the old claim that eating Pop Rocks candy and then drinking Coke will cause stomach damage. Meanwhile, another legend says that the acids in the soda can dissolve a tooth if it's left in the glass of drink overnight, and still another asserts that mixing a Coke with aspirin produces a drug-like high. All these claims are false. But another claim that Coke originally contained cocaine as part of its formula, and we are talking cocaine, is verifiably true. The drink was created in the 1880s, and even after the negative aspects of cocaine were uncovered, the company continued using trace amounts of the drug in its soda until the 1920s. And that's why they were called the Roaring Twenties, okay? People were out here drinking cocaine. They were drinking cocaine. And they probably had it at the White House. So, cocaine has been at the White House before, I guess, is what I'm saying. Moving right along. Number 5, the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan legend has been around for years, and it's been attributed to a number of famous rich people, from Bill Gates to Nat King Cole. As the story goes, a motorist stops to help a man change a flat tire. The man asks for the motorist's address so that he might send a reward. A few weeks later, the motorist receives a thank you note in the mail with a check for $10,000 signed by a famous celebrity. The story tends to vary depending on whom the grateful celebrity is, with one popular version claiming that Donald Trump paid off a helpful stranger's mortgage. Trump himself has even tried to confirm this, but all the proof points to it being nothing more than an often repeated rumor. And the fact that Donald Trump has tried to prove this, I want to know if it happened. I want to know if Donald Trump was out there and this man show up and try to change his tire. I have a hard time believing that Donald Trump is paying off somebody's mortgage. That man seems to be about making money and holding money, not about giving money away. The way that he shot them paper towel rolls and over in Puerto Rico, but I have heard that urban legend many times with different celebrities attached. That one I did know about. I did. Number 4, Walt Disney is cryogenically frozen. This is another rumor that's been around for a long time, and it seems that everyone has heard it at some point or another. It says that Walt Disney arranged for his body to be frozen upon his death in the hope that future technology would be able to bring him back to life. No one's exactly sure how this one got started, but records show that Disney was cremated when he died in 1966. It's suspected that the amount of secrecy surrounding his funeral, coupled with his reputation as an inventor, led to the creation of this long-standing myth. And I thought that was true. Several of these I thought were true because I have heard them, and this is what happens with urban legends. We hear them so often, repeated by so many people for so long, that we believe them to be true. And apparently this is another one in the long line of urban legends that are not based in reality. I think it's impressive that Walt Disney was cremated in 1966. I think that was a pretty rare thing to happen at that time. Most people were buried. So in a way, Disney was ahead of his time in that regard too. And the day is probably coming where if he had been cryogenically frozen, he could be thawed out and live again. We'll never know. Number 3, the sewer alligator. This story, one of the most popular of all urban legends, asserts that the New York City sewer system is infested with deadly alligators. In the most popular versions, the animals were brought north from Florida by people who wanted to keep them as pets. When the gators started getting too big and violent, they were released into the sewers. This story dates back to the 1930s when sensationalist newspapers started reporting countless stories of alligators being found in and around New York City, with some even claiming that police were making regular trips underground to hunt the creatures down. Nearly all of these stories are false, and the few that are true almost undoubtedly concern animals that escaped from local zoos, but the sewer alligator story has continued to be passed down through the years, and it still exists today in many different forms. And I refuse to believe that the story of alligators in New York sewers is not based in reality. This is not a world I want to live in where there are not alligators in the New York City sewer systems. Despite my love for the Ninja Turtles and not wanting harm to come to them, I believe in my heart of hearts that there are some alligators, okay? Or that there have been some alligators. I'm going to make it my mission in between episodes 66 and 67 to find a news article, a sourced news article, that talks about an alligator being found in the sewers of New York City. And I'm going to prove the author of this article wrong. Because this is a hill that I will die on. That in fact this is not just an urban legend, but this is based in reality. I refuse it. I draw the line there. There have been alligators found in the sewer systems in New York City. Number 2, the vanishing hitchhiker. One of the oldest and most often repeated urban legends, the vanishing hitchhiker story comes in many forms. The most popular version involves a man who picks up a young hitchhiker, usually a girl, on a deserted country road. He drives her to her house, but when he turns to say goodbye, he finds that she's inexplicably disappeared from the back seat of the car. Confused, the man rings the doorbell of the house, whereupon he learns that the girl has been dead for years, killed in a car accident on the very spot where he picked her up that night. There are a number of variations to this story, and it dates back so far that the earliest versions take place on horseback or in covered wagons. And I've heard of this one before. I want to say that there even was a story like this included on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries back in the day. Something very similar to this on that creepy show with Robert Stack. The original host. That man terrified me growing up. Old Robert Stack terrified me growing up in his big oversized trench coat with the fog behind him and that little creepy music. Do 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 do, and he'd go, Unsolved Mysteries. Ugh. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. I get terrified. I'm sitting out here in my shed. The sun isn't even up. I'm terrified thinking about it, okay? I mean, talking about something.
Join me. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
I'm already getting afraid. It's just scary. This was the second version, and it's not any better. Yeah, I don't like that. And then this man always talk about stories where stuff happens to people when they feel comfortable and they feel at home and at least expect it, and that is where I'm at right now. And the only good thing is that with these headphones on and this microphone out, it picks up all of the activities outside the shed. So I hear somebody coming if they came, and I'll throw some bows. And look, I'll scream. I'll pull a Bobby Hill. You know what I'm saying? I'll yell, "That's not my person," kick you where the sun don't shine, okay? But I've heard this urban legend of the vanishing hitchhiker. Don't put any stock in that one. I agree that is little more than an urban legend, though very entertaining. Number 1, the kidney heist. The most ubiquitous and persistent urban legend, the kidney heist story, has been immortalized on the internet, TV shows, and even a few movies. It supposedly dates back to 1997 when an email started circulating warning people of a new and frightening crime that was catching on in some cities. In most versions, a business traveler is relaxing in a bar when a stranger strikes up a conversation and then offers to buy them a drink. After taking a few sips, the traveler becomes woozy and then blacks out, only to awaken in a hotel room bathtub covered with ice. There's a phone next to them and a note that says to call 911 immediately. When the paramedics arrive, the person learns that their kidney has been harvested by people who hope to sell it on the black market. This story is completely false, but it's been circulating for years. Its appearance on the internet is one of the oldest email hoaxes. In order to quell the rumor, the National Kidney Foundation has even asked supposed victims of the crime to contact them, but to this date, they haven't had any takers. A scary tale, but still only an urban legend. And this is one of those urban legends that I realize is probably not true, okay? But that at the same time, I just can't fully discount either. Because I've heard it told by so many people for so many years. I read the email sent to my Yahoo account when I was a child, okay? You mean to tell me that in all of human history there's been nobody who's been drugged and had their organ taken? I'm going to find the news article. In between this show and the next, I'm going to find the news article about alligators in the sewer. I'm going to prove this right or wrong. I'm going to find one person who was drugged and had their organs taken without their consent. Time for me to put on my journalism hat. Okay. That is certainly a scary scenario, though, to be taken advantage of in that way. And we kind of already covered a similar situation, granted after the man had passed away earlier in the show. And we also have covered before on our show how the Uyghur Muslims in China who are kept in concentration camps have been victims. It's been documented. They've been victims of organ harvesting. We know that organ harvesting happens, but the claim is that the way that it's described in this scenario is nothing more than a myth and a legend. And I'm going to prove them wrong, okay? Watch me. What's your favorite urban legend? What's the one on this list that you heard the most growing up? What urban legend was not mentioned in this top 10 but that you think should be? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Find us on X at intheshed4. I would love to hear what your favorite urban legends are. What are the ones that have persisted through time for you? What are the ones that you find to be based on some semblance of truth? What are the ones that duped you as a kid? What are the ones that you find the most terrifying? Write into the show. I'd love to hear from you, know what you think, and I'll even include some of your responses on our next episode. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 66. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports, or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Join our membership club at patreon.com/intheshed4. Look for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on X at InTheShed4. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, talk NFL playoffs, and investigate together the incredible phenomenon of stigmata. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling weekend. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scout. Meemaw, we made it!
We sure did.